Please welcome Amanda Hale, Vice President of Partnerships at The Atlantic.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the Atlantic Festival. I'm Amanda Hale. In March, The Atlantic sought the opinion of critics, scholars, and novelists to identify the greatest American novels of all time. 136 titles were selected. Now, nearly half are banned in schools and libraries. In fact, efforts to ban books are on the rise, sparking a battle over the freedom of expression. In this forum, we're bringing together stakeholders, including librarians who could be banned just for doing their job, and authors and novelists whose books are coming off the shelves. We will explain all of that impact. We'll also examine and look to other countries for how they could serve as an example for the dangers of censorship. Before we get started, I want to thank our underwriter, Visit Seattle, for their support of The Atlantic's journalism. As a part of this program, they are making a collection of banned books by Seattle authors available to all of you. I hope you grab some on your way in. Please silence your cell phones, but keep them handy. If you hear something that resonates with you, please share it on social media using the hashtag TAF24. Now, let's begin our conversation.
Here to discuss protecting the pages, why lived experiences are being banned from bookshelves. Welcome to the stage, Victoria Scott Miller, owner of Liberation Bookstore, and Cindy Hohl, president of the American Library Association, with Gal Beckerman, staff writer at The Atlantic.
I don't get the applause? Just kidding. Thank you both for being here to talk about this truly important topic. I want to start with just some statistics, actually, from the American Library Association. Last year, nearly 4,300 book titles were targeted for censorship. During the same time, public libraries saw a 92% jump in book challenges when compared to 2022. So those are just the numbers that we're talking about here. But Cindy, put some texture on that. Tell us sort of what are librarians actually facing day to day, and also let's talk particularly about Missouri too, where I know this is sort of escalated to the level of the state legislature. If you could fill us in a bit on that as well.
Sure. So, librarians go into the field to be public servants. And we're here to open our doors every day to welcome everyone in. Libraries are beautiful places that are safe spaces and should be representative of the community that we serve. So librarians go into this work with good hearts and wanting to be of help. It's really challenging when we come into the library and we receive reports from organized groups questioning the materials that are in the collection. We sometimes receive challenge requests from groups where the titles that they're requesting to be challenged or removed, they aren't even in the collection. So that tells you that maybe these are not active library users. The challenge in that is building that relationship in that moment, because at that time we do have an opportunity to help convert them to being a library user. And this is September, so every year we celebrate National Card Sign-Up Month. So if we were to receive such an opportunity during September especially, we will help guide them through the process of how to be an informed reader. Libraries are truly for everyone, and so it's problematic at best to hear that we have elected officials who decide that they know what's best for the constituents in their area. Librarians are good people. We are trusted professionals. We're parents, voters, taxpayers, and constituents, and we deserve respect. When we hear that there is legislation that is being drafted and enacted to bring harm to the profession, it really doesn't make sense to us. In Missouri, when I first heard of Senate Bill 775, it was very troubling to me because school librarians would be incarcerated and fined $2,000 if a book should go home in the hands of a reader where their parent or guardian did not agree that they should have access to that book. In all libraries, the goal is equal and open access to information. So we would hope that parents and guardians and caregivers would accompany their child to the library. And in any school library in America, I would find it really hard to believe that you would find inappropriate materials in the collection, as has been reported. That's harmful rhetoric, and this is 2024. We don't have time for that. We need to be in an educated and informed society. Libraries are here to help everyone see themselves between the pages of a book, and we need to elevate and celebrate the diversity among us.
Can you? I should have said also, once we're done talking, you'll have a chance to ask questions too. So just start formulating some questions in your own mind. Cindy, just to drill in just a little bit, can you give us a sense of sort of what are the categories that are sort of coming up for people in terms of why books are being banned? I mean, what's the reasoning that's being given in some of these cases?
Well, they are well-informed reasons. When we receive a challenge report and someone just provides a little snippet of the narrative, and it's obvious that they have not read the entire content, it's interesting to see how someone could hear that maybe in the community or on the news, in the media. It might have happened in a neighboring community or even in another state. But we will receive these reports where concerns are raised that there is content that is inappropriate for certain audiences. And again, if it's not even in the collection, then that's not a title we need to be worried about just quite yet, because we haven't procured the item. There are so many opportunities for us to serve our community in the best way forward, and that means we bring every single person with us. The beauty and power of our diversity is what strengthens our nation. Every single person needs to be acknowledged in their wholeness, and everyone needs to come to the library and it be a safe space for them. When we hear titles that are continually being targeted are representative of Black, Indigenous people of color, or those from the LGBTQIA plus community, it tells a very harsh reality that some would have us othered in present-day society. We have neighbors that feel that perhaps we're not equal. And in America, as long as we have the United States Constitution, the First Amendment is everyone's right, including youth.
So what we're seeing in libraries is obviously part of a bigger sort of cultural shift towards increasing kind of divisiveness and censoriousness, a world in which people don't just kind of have differing opinions, but they try to act on one another to keep people from expressing themselves. And which brings me to Victoria, who had the first Black-owned bookstore in downtown Raleigh, right?
In North Carolina.
In North Carolina. Tell us about your bookstore. Tell us about what happened to your bookstore.
Sure. So I think in order to set the stage, there are 100 counties in North Carolina, and we were the first Black-owned children's bookstore in the entire state, Juneteenth 2023, right? So we have to think about, thank you, but we have to think about timing. Our bookstore began 6 years ago. My father, who was a historic photographer, and my mother, who is an environmentalist, they kept these papers in Ziploc bags up until my father's passing. And my husband, who was a former nuclear engineer in the Navy, we had fallen on financial hard times, and we started digging through these papers to kind of see what they were, and we found out that they were the handwritten letters between Frederick Douglass and Nathaniel Knight, who was a justice of the peace He was a justice of the peace and a bookstore owner in Fells Point, Baltimore. We were offered, we were offered about, I would say a substantial amount in the millions for these papers with $250 in our account. And of course, you can imagine what the conversations were. I was like, hey, babe, we are financially set, we're good. And my husband, this beautiful black man sitting right here in front of me, right here, baby. He says to me, in all of his glory, it would only last us for one generation. So let's see, So let's see what we can do with what we have. So we took our 2011 Chevy Cruze in 2019, and at $250, I'll let them pass. And we purchased our first round of books, and we opened up the first iteration of Liberation Station. And then we got enough money to buy a Costco table. So then our storefront became the 6-foot Costco table for the next 4 years. And as we began to see the culture of North Carolina change, we are raising 2 black boys. Langston is 13 and Emerson is 8. An ode to our love story. We met in spoken word in college, 16 years in now. But what we realized is that the culture was changing. So while our children were growing up with books that represent them inside of their home, their peers did not have that. So they weren't able to have those conversations when they were in school. And then we came to the table and we said, hey, you know, what does our community need? Because a lot of what our bookstore does is we allow the community to mold us. And we went into this knowing that Black liberation will always face opposition, right? We knew that. And so we would open the doors to our first physical location on Fayetteville Street, which faces the Capitol. And we chose that location strategically because as they are making legislation that removes us from having agency, we wanted to be able to add it to our store as it was happening in real time. So June 2023, we opened June 19th to a 3-day celebration. We had the North Carolina Opera singing Lift Every Voice and Sing among the backdrop of George Floyd murals that have been painted in the wall of our building during the protest. We welcomed 4,000 people into our 364 square foot bookstore. We also allowed the children ranging from 1 all the way to 100 to have White Glove Day, where they were able to now interact with those Douglas papers wearing white gloves. So now we kind of move them from behind the museum glass and we put them into history to teach them how to write their own stories. And finally, we conclude with all the Black equestrians from North Carolina riding on horseback from the Capitol to the front door of our building. So obviously we were there to make a statement, right? If you're gonna be the first, you're gonna have to do it, right? But we could not foresee what divisiveness would do to our physical location that was created with so much beauty and intention. We even had a Braille wall made of mustard seed affirmations. And on the first day that we opened, there was a visually impaired child that came in and was able to rub across our walls and hear and see with his hands that he is art, that he is valuable, that he is loved, right? June comes in and we are flourishing and really just planting ourselves in the community, finding our rhythm. And by August, we began receiving death threats. But these death threats were almost invisible, right? So they're on Instagram, they're on the Facebook, these are people that are faceless and, we didn't necessarily take it seriously at that time. And then our oldest son, Langston's 13th birthday would come. And of course, he had been coming with us for the last, 6 years as a mobile bookstore. And one of the promises we made to him was that you could man the store by yourself on Saturdays. We'll allow you to do that, right? He manned the store on Saturday, and I got an Instagram text message that told us the color of what he was wearing. And I remember us just shutting down, right? This beautiful thing that we had created for our community selflessly as an offering was now facing that opposition that we knew we would experience going into it. The difference is that being mobile, we didn't have an address. So now we have a physical location of accessibility. And so what we decided to do as a family, as we kind of navigated, how do we show the community how to show up in this moment when you have death threats trying to take away the very thing that you created for children to be able to see themselves? These are beautiful Black children that we are catering to. And so we decided to close our physical location and practice resting, but resting with activism, right? Resting with intention. What does it look like to redefine opposing opposition? What does it look like to fight? And so we didn't want to do that exhausted as a family. And so what we decided to do was take a moment of pause to be able to tell our story, to be able to show people how to curate experiences outside of a physical location. Because we are a movement without walls, we still have that impact. So how do we continue to move forward, still maintaining our agency? So that was the goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, it's quite a story.
Yeah.
I want to just ask about this notion of like having a physical location. Does that feel important? And like, are there plans in the future to do it? And if so, why would that be sort of a central element in the activism, actually having a physical space?
Yeah, I think what it says to the community when you have a physical location is that we are allowing ourselves to be planted here. We are allowing roots to grow. And I think a physical location, as we explore the physical location, we want to own the land. I think that's the conversation that we're trying to have now, is what does it look like to own spaces of liberation and not borrow them? One of the issues is that as we were talking and discussing with our building manager about the threats that we were facing, it was all about capitalism. So they were like, well, are you interested in showing your unit? And so there was this dehumanizing moment where our urgency was not their urgency.
Right.
And I think the best way to do that, to attack that, is to own the space in which you choose to promote activism. So that is the goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cindy, I just want to turn back to you for a second with a question that I'm just curious to hear you talk about this a bit, which is, some of the sort of criticisms or the complaints from these parents who are trying, or people who are trying to ban books, is that parents should have more control, right, over what their children are exposed to. And I wonder how you sort of handle that particular line of criticism or questioning that sometimes leads to these book bannings.
Well, it really depends on the library type to where that concern is valid. At the public library, we hope families will visit us every day. We would expect children to be accompanied by a parent or guardian or a caregiver, actually. So it's interesting to hear that some parents feel that they don't have access to the library catalog because that's available online for most libraries. You can go to the website and you can see what's in the collection. You can place an item on reserve if you're interested. Libraries are very transparent in operation. We have our policies on our website, and anytime anyone comes in, a librarian is here to help answer questions and connect everyone to the resources that we have available. So for parents who say that they don't believe they have control over what their child is accessing, perhaps in a school library, again, I haven't seen the library yet that is so robust and full of resources that they have a jam-packed collection with every single book in existence. That doesn't exist. So what we do have is public schools that are often struggling with having resources available. They don't have the budget that they should. When we are here to serve our public in the best way possible, Librarians and teachers are doing the best that we can with the resources we have available. So if parents had questions about that, we would encourage them to have a strong relationship with those teachers and librarians, because we are absolutely here to help them access the information they need to make informed decisions. And by all means, read with your child.
I just want to remind folks, in a few minutes, we're going to start taking some audience questions. There's 2 microphones set up here, so if people want to begin to line up in a couple minutes, they can. Just sort of one last question to both of you as a way of sort of closing on a hopeful note. You know, we're talking about sort of pushing back against bans, pushing back against divisiveness, pushing back against all the forces that are trying to keep people from information. But I wonder sort of what advice for advocacy, for thinking sort of proactively in terms of, you know, getting people more exposed to reading, to books, you know, you can think of and offer to us as a kind of a bit of hopefulness. Victoria, you want to say?
Yeah. So I think when it comes to activism, and that begins with accessibility, right? And I think making books accessible is probably the best way to promote activism. We have an extension of our bookstore called the Black Lit Library, where we've taken our concept and we've put it in places like Duke University, right, as a permanently housed library. Part of that process for Duke to be able to acquire is to sign a 300-year lease, just to make sure that people understand we're not going anywhere. And so making it accessible in spaces that feel often protected, I think, is a process for activism.
I'm Dakota of the Santee Sioux Nation, and yes, we're all still here. From the time that we were discovered up until 2024, Indigenous peoples are still here, and for many... Pidamae wo Pidatanka, that means many thanks, I appreciate you, in Dakota. And there was a time in this country when we could not speak our language. We could not read in Dakota. We were not allowed to write in school. We couldn't even sing our language until 1978. This isn't something that was so long ago. While my grandparents experienced residential boarding school, during those times, they definitely were told exactly what they could read, and it was nothing about our people, and it certainly wasn't in our language. So as we all gather in our communities now, it's so important that everyone has equal access to information, and especially in the language that they want to read or listen to that content. That's what libraries are here for. If we don't have it, we'll see if we can borrow it from someone else. That's the beauty of reciprocity in libraries.
I'm curious, are there efforts in libraries to make sure that there's books in different languages of immigrants, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I work at the Kansas City Public Library, and in our schools, in our public schools, we have students that speak over 50 different languages other than English. And so we absolutely do what we can to have bilingual story times, to have materials available, and to have translation services as well.
Right. Have those been subject also to banning or to attempts to shut it down, or?
You know, I don't know that study has been conducted yet, but that's a great question. And I'm sure someone will be leaning into that soon.
Okay, I think we're going to start taking some questions from the audience. Ma'am?
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. My name is Dory Scott, and I'm doing my doctorate on Beyond the Ban. I'm looking at banned books, so thank you for the work. What is the one message you want me to put out to the community as I talk about the value of not banning books? Thank you.
No voice should be silenced in America. We need to read to understand the human condition, and we're always going to be stronger together. So let's be brave and risky and open that page. And the beauty of being an American is that we have those First Amendment rights. If you don't like what you read, please put the book down and pick up another one.
Other questions from folks? I'll ask a question while other people. If you want to go to the microphone, there's one over there. In the meantime, Victoria, you're an author too, right?
I am, yes.
So has this experience sort of shaped how you think about the kind of stories that you want to tell?
Well, I'll answer that in two parts. So my writing journey actually began with writing for the North Carolina Museum of Art. I was the first Black woman contractor in their 82-year history. And so when I look on the walls, I saw that the curation of the museum did not reflect children of color. And so I created a book that is called The Museum Lives in Me. And what we do is that we insert what is lacking within the museum construct. And I am able to do that with all museums across the world, which has been such a privilege. But when you ask about why is it important to write books or to engage in writing children's books, I saw too many books that showed children with capes on. And for me, raising two Black boys in this country, I think it's important for them to see the dailiness of their humanity, brushing their teeth, walking, picking herbs from the garden and making tea, sitting around playing Uno or spades or whatever the case may be. And so I want to put more of that into the world, that superhero comes with the dailiness, right, of your humanity, and to access that, yeah.
That's great. We have a question over here? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kesley. I'm a senior at Georgetown. My question is more for Cindy, but open to everybody. I want to ask about library funding. I'm not sure if you saw, I'm sure you did, the New York Public Library advertising on LinkedIn for funding. And I wanted to ask you how you balance threats to freedom of speech and public. I want to ask how you balance book banning and maintaining a budget.
Thank you for that question. And those who seek to silence voices also seek to remove resources until they get their way. And no public library in America is going to allow that to happen, because free people read freely. And that means that every single person should be able to open a book and read it and have that opportunity to take that information in. So when we hear that there are elected officials that seek to reduce, decrease, eliminate funding for the public, that doesn't make sense. That's a conflict of interest, because they were elected to serve the public, not to deny access to information. So as libraries continue to move through these times, and censorship isn't new, we are aware of this behavior. The first documented censorship actually started in the 1600s. So while this is a wave that we're having to deal with, this is a minor distraction. When we look at the beauty of libraries and all the wealth of resources that we have access to, we're gonna stay the course. We're gonna fight for everyone's rights to be able to access a book, to read, to listen to whatever it is they want. And when funders decide that they can't support the library anymore because they don't want to support democracy, they don't want to support the First Amendment, and constitutional rights are no longer for the projects that they fund, then we need to pay attention to those organizations or our elected officials and hold them accountable. I hope that answered your question. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Hello. I was impressed by your statement that no voice should not be heard, and I agree. I think even Mein Kampf should be in a library. However, isn't the trend to ban books about exposing the impressionable, the young, the students, to material that is inappropriate for them? Could you talk about that, please?
Thank you for that question. And yes, that is the current state of misinformation in this country. You can always rely on your librarian to help you identify accurate information from credible sources. And as we are information professionals, we are here to serve the public and our students in the best way possible through providing literacy services. When we have story times with our families, we have specific areas of literacy that we are covering with them. So while they may think they're just shaking the sillies out with us and learning a new finger play, we're actually helping them engage all areas of brain development for early childhood literacy. So for those parents that have those unfounded concerns, I encourage them to attend a story time and see what it's actually about. And actually talking to their children about what they learned at the library is a great way to interact and build that bond and share that love of reading. Because as we know, it takes a reader to create a reader. And when children see parents reading, that's the best indicator of future success with their own literacy development. So while we may be misled by some organized groups who love to spin that narrative, I assure you, as president of the American Library Association, there isn't one professional librarian, especially one who's credentialed with a Master of Library and Information Science degree, that would ever bring harm. We're here to help.
Okay, well, thank you both so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it.
One by one, the ghost crew appears. I'm at home with the wisps of boys filling the cemetery. Will the murder stop? One day, gotta believe, Jerome. You've got to believe. Emmett looks like an old man. Even older since I've known him. His weariness scares me. Though a ghost, will sadness make me older and older? I look around, I realize ghost boys, thousands of ghost boys, are trying to change the world. That's why we haven't said goodbye. Why we aren't really gone.
For a presentation produced by our underwriter, visit Seattle, here to highlight how Seattle fuels free expression in its literary community. Please welcome Jewel Parker Rhodes, author of Ghost Boys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. For those of you who missed the transition into the video, I really encourage you to go on YouTube, Seattle's YouTube page, and watch it because it's really beautifully done. So you know that I am the author of Ghost Boys. Yes, thank you very much. Ghost Boys was written to honor the murdered Black children such as Emmett Till, Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, children who were all murdered by racism. Now, in some novels, the dead are just victims who enlightened everybody else. In my novel, the dead have agency. They have empathy and empowerment, and they're there to soothe the recently dead, like Jerome Rogers, the protagonist in my novel, into the afterlife and into the next stage of their transformation. Now, in the African American community, we say, every goodbye ain't gone. In other words, right, that there is a thin line between the living and the dead. So my ghosts are social justice advocates who bear witness, searching the living to find someone who can live and make it better. Ironically, it's Sarah, the daughter of the white police officer who, unlike her dad, isn't racist, doesn't have unconscious bias, but she is the one who is destined to live and make the world better. Now, my book is banned because it's political. It's banned because it's anti-police. It's banned because I dare to expose the stereotypes that Black children aren't ignorant, aren't thugs, aren't sexual, aren't older than their years, and deserve the protection of all adults as children. For me, book banning is akin to slavery. The enslaved are kept from reading and writing because it was believed that illiteracy would make it easier to control them, to indoctrinate them, to make them more passive. And isn't it so interesting that we have parents, primarily white parents, in this century, keeping children of all ethnicities, even their own, from really wrestling with the promise of citizenship, the promise of democracy, of liberty and justice and all, keeping them from reading and being knowledgeable. Now get this, you can read Ghost Boys in Spanish, you can read it in Chinese, both mainland and Taiwan. You can read it in Japan. You can read it in Romania. You can read it in Iran, and they don't pay intellectual property rights. You can read it in Germany. You can read it almost everywhere. But if you happen to be an American youth, you can't read it in Florida, parts of Texas, parts of California, Nebraska, parts of Nebraska, Tennessee, Kentucky, New Jersey, and who knows where else. As a child, librarians fed me books. I lived in a ghetto and my parents couldn't afford to buy books. I would save up pop bottles and get a nickel to get a comic book. But these teachers and librarians would feed me books, and they fed me primarily books about white families that lived on a farm. And I learned to empathize with these folks, their nuclear families, their harvesting, their milking of the cows. But I never saw me. And then I went to college. 8 years, undergraduate, master's, doctoral education. I was never given a book by a writer of color. It wasn't until one day I went into the library and saw Gail Jones's Corregidora, and it was like, what? Black people write books? And I switched my major to English the very next day. Think of it. I could have lost my career as a writer, okay? Now, educators say that books should be a mirror. And so that's what I try to do, mirror multi-ethnic children. They say books should be a window so you can develop empathy in other people's worlds. And that's too what I try to do. But a long time ago, for my first novel, Voodoo Dreams, I went to Seattle on my first book tour. I never knew such a beautiful place existed. Seattle took me to their famous bookstore, Elliott Bay Bookstores. They took me to read at the Center for the Blind. I went to the African American Library that sort of was one of the oldest African American libraries in the country, and its name was the Douglas Truth African American Library. Seattle was and is gorgeous. Water, mountain, greenery, but it's the people that make it special. And that day, I felt so welcomed by this multi-ethnic audience that wanted to know about different narratives, wanted to know about me, that I swore one day Seattle would be my home. Well, it took me 30 years to get there. Yes, yes. And I love Seattle. Did you know that Seattle has over 63 independent bookstores? Woo! And in those bookstores are the most marvelous, wonderful people who know books, who will talk books, who plan events in-store, in the communities and public schools. They also have a Seattle library system that started in Pioneer Square as a one-room library. Today, there are over 27 branches, and our libraries, we have no fines. So no child needs to be embarrassed about not paying for fines. No child needs to be embarrassed for, not taking that book back. Instead, all are welcome. And we have joined with the Brooklyn Public Library to have a book banning club. So there are over 7,000 members. So youth can literally access either library without censorship. Woo, unbelievable. Our education system is great too. We have the University of Washington with its world-class creative writing program. We also have the Seattle Arts and Lecture Series, which brings a diverse crew of authors from all over the world to talk to our communities. And there are always free events. And the Seattle Arts and Lecture Series also stages free writing workshops and classes in public school classes. We also have the Clarion Writers Conference, Hugo House for online in-person classes, Port Townsend Literary Festival. We've got everything. Now, y'all probably think Seattle is a tech center. It isn't. It's an arts and culture center. Where else could me, a 70-year-old Black woman, have a book club with my 28-year-old Chinese-American Google friend every week? And I got to tell you, one of our books that we read was J.D. Vance. All right, we were getting enlightened. But you also have people from all over the world. My white Pilates instructor and I have joined the RuPaul Book Club. My hairdresser is a blogger and literally can talk about literature better than any esteemed professor. I can be going to a restaurant and a teacher will be shouting out from the reservation line, "Come and visit my school." Or I'll have a student come up to me and say, "I read all your books." Seattle is my home, and I invite you to come and visit and make it your home too. It is a city where, as a Black woman, I can walk and not feel racism. Better yet, it's a city where I can be and not feel microaggressions. It is a city where I can write about hard topics, knowing that my community is going to say, "Good for you." It is a heaven. It is a place to be. Seattle. Come read, write, and visit me in Seattle. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Now for a closer look at the foreshadowing from abroad. Please welcome Masih Alinejad, Iranian-American journalist, activist, and author. Rania Mahmoud, author and activist. With Gal Beckerman, staff writer at The Atlantic.
Well, I feel very privileged to be sitting on stage with these brave women who you're going to hear more about soon. Rania, I'm going to start with you because I think what will be interesting for the audience is to hear a little bit from both of you of your stories and sort of how you arrived and to be on a panel about writers whose work has been suppressed. And so you have published only here, not in Sudan, correct? Why would that be?
It's not in Sudan, but it's in different countries.
Right.
So I published in Jordan, in Egypt, in UK, when the book translated into English, and here last year.
Okay. But your work wasn't able to be officially published in Sudan?
Yes.
Okay, why is that?
Because of the censorship in Sudan, and because Sudan, as you know, was run by this Islamic military dictatorship for 30 years. And they were banning any books or censored any content that could address certain topics, or Islamic, or like war, genocide, marginalization, ethnic, and gender equalities.
Right.
So any of those topics, if you have even one line, you could be censored and your book could be banned. And in Sudan also we have this the controlling for everything that could be published, like pre-printing and after printing.
Right.
Even the publishing houses should submit their work to the Ministry of Culture for them to read and to approve it, and then they will say, okay,
Right.
either you publish this or not. And sometimes after you publish it, it could be prohibited from, yeah.
So for you, was there a specific work that made it hard for you to continue being in Sudan? I mean, was a specific work that was censored that forced you out of the country? Yeah.
I was writing in journals and newspapers and at Doha magazine. And when whenever I have an article at the Doha magazine, they got it and they prohibit it from being distributed in Sudan.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is sort of a broad question, but what does it feel like to live in a country where you feel like the ability to have the level of speech or to say that, to write about the kinds of things that you want to write about are curtailed, are shut down? What does that actually feel like?
Of course, you feel suffocated. Yeah, you feel like someone is grabbing your neck and just prevent you from breathing or expressing yourself. And actually, moreover, because I'm a woman in Sudan, and Sudan is very conservative society, so there is much layers, like levels of layers on me as a writer to express myself and to publish and to put my opinions out there and to have a voice. Because women in Sudan, almost they don't have a voice, especially when I was growing up.
Right. Masih, can you have a very unique story, and I want people to understand sort of why you became so dangerous to the Iranian regime.
I am dangerous.
She's dangerous.
I love that, actually.
Despite her looks, she's dangerous. Take us a little bit. Give us a version of what exactly. First of all, I want to understand sort of what work you were doing that would have put you in the position that you ended up being in, having your life threatened, and then sort of take us through that story just a little bit.
First of all, I take it as a compliment. If you are a woman in the Middle East, you have to be dangerous for the oppressors. That's how you survive in Iran. Otherwise, they want to actually put the fear inside your heart, and every single day when you wake up, you feel miserable. But we, women in Iran, Afghanistan, we decided to make our oppressors feel miserable. And thank you. So, yes, what was the question? I really
well, you may have answered it for us, but I was curious to hear about the specific work or the opinions that got you in hot water with the Iranian regime.
I'm a journalist. I'm a women's rights campaigner. I'm an author. But in the eyes of the Islamic Republic, I'm a traitor. I'm a prostitute. I'm an American asset. I work for CIA. I work for MI6, for Mossad. I mean, how come at the same time I can work for different agencies? That's the mentality of a regime that imposes censorship on journalists, women's rights activists. But to be honest, I want to actually answer the question that you asked my sister, because that means everything when you think about how it feels to live in an authoritarian regime that imposes censorship. In my country, Iran, censorship is not just blocking words or banning books, newspapers, films, cinema. the regime thinks that these are too small. So they went further that. And they actually censor human beings. They censor women. So I really want you to take a moment, all of you, men and women, sitting shoulder to shoulder. Women, you used mirror to make yourself beautiful, to let your hair down, no? And you're enjoying it, laughing together, communicating with each other, the way that you want to be. But this simple act of just sitting together is a crime in Iran. So the regime actually criminalized showing your hair, sitting with your fellow citizen, men, shaking hands, singing, dancing. So to me, these form of censorship is, as my sister said, it's like I feel suffocated. I cannot even breathe. So for the regime in Iran, controlling women's body is the most powerful of sense of censorship. So that's why they feel so threatening when they see women just putting their hair down, just walking unveiled, just singing. Now that I'm speaking to you, there is a woman called Zara Ismaili. She's in prison for the crime of singing one of the famous songs of Lady Gaga in public. And you know what? I want you to understand the pain, that why I get angry when I talk about this. Because I want to tell you the logic behind it. They say that if a woman sings, men get aroused. Yeah. I want to actually try it here. Yeah.
Hey,
I cannot.
we're taking a strange turn.
I cannot sing Lady Gaga's song, but I can sing a love song to understand that you really get aroused. That's an insult to men. That's an insult to every single of us. بردی از یادم دادی بربادم با یادت شادم.
Should we have a raise of hands? But Masih,
I know we are laughing, but that's beyond sad. That this is the logic of the Islamic Republic, of Taliban. Right now that I'm talking to you, speaking, like just talking like this in public, being criminalized by Taliban's new law. And that breaks my heart. And what it breaks my heart, because they're not going to stay there. These viruses going to infect the rest of the world. They're going to come here as well. So the first step of censoring women's voice, women's body, is the form of censorship in Iran. They came after us, every single of us here in the United States of America as well.
You had your life threatened, I mean, in a serious way. How has that changed your attitude about, I mean, I think I know the answer to this question.
Nothing.
But does it, I mean, you were telling me about what it's meant for how you live, for how your family lives. I mean, has it given you pause at all, or caused you to rethink how outspoken you should be?
I mean, after the kidnapping plot, when the FBI stopped the kidnapping plot, I thought that, okay, I'm going to be safe in America, practice First Amendment, practice my freedom of speech, and I'm going to enjoy freedom of speech. That didn't happen. The Iranian regime sent killer. The guy got arrested in front of my house with AK-47. 3 of them are in prison right now, and I'm going to invite all of you to come to the public trial. It's enjoyable to see how they get embarrassed, how the law enforcement in America embarrassed the killers. But of course, that turned my life absolutely upside down. I've been moved 21 times from one safe house to other safe houses. It's not easy. But hey, my heroes are Iranian women. They face these killers every single day. They face acid attack every single day. They face rape if they say no to Islamic Republic. So the mothers of those who get killed in Iran, they're still fighting the Islamic Republic. So that's why I see them and I gain my power from them. And I tell myself the same thing that I said to you, that I'm only 45 kilos. I'm not carrying any weapons. But those who carry weapons, they're scared of my hair. They're scared of my existence. They're scared of Iranian women. So I try to make them feel miserable. I don't give up my fight.
Okay. Ronnie, I'm curious about the work that you've produced here. So you have a book of poetry and a novel, right? Has your work, has your creative work, your sort of life as a writer been affected by the experience that you've had of being exiled, of leaving your country? How has it sort of changed your creative life?
Of course, being here in America and have all freedom to just express myself has affected my way of thinking and my way of writing. But I don't want to talk about me now. Let me just give, maybe it will be a glimpse of hope or something about how the Sudanese people, writers and artists fought back the censorship and ban the books when they've been banning and everything. So the Sudanese people, although they were under this dictatorship, but they could create a form of resistance to allow them read and write and share what they do with their readers and friends and things. One of those things were the underground networks and circles where someone could write something and then they will circulated it from hand to hand after they photocopy it. Huh. And Sudanese people who were living abroad, they were smuggling books in their suitcases among their clothes. And then it gets inside Sudan, and then people photocopy it, and then they circulated it. One of the Sudanese writer, Abdelaziz Barakasakin, when his book has been banned, he just put it in PDF and sent it to everyone, and ask everyone to just send it to their friends. And one of the books that he wrote is being published by the Ministry of the Culture. Still, after they print it, they banned it, which is totally nonsense. And censorship in Sudan is not only for the fiction or creative writing as well. It's political books, religious, like Mahmoud Muhammad Taha in 1885, he been executed just because he was writing books that challenging Islam and challenging the narrative that was there. For example, one of the writers, one of the movie makers, his name is Hadooj, he made a film, documentary film called Beat of Antonov, and it documented the genocide and the killing that the state doing against the people in the Nuba Mountains. And of course, film like this, there is no chance to be screened in the movie theater, if there is any movie theater, because the authority, the regime, when they came, they shut every movie theater and wherever people can go, and yeah. So what we did, we just screened it in our homes, in our circles. For example, I was the one who was responsible to do it in my city, in Madani. And because my house couldn't fit like large people, so I reached out to venues so that they can allow us to screen it. And most of them said no, unless one venue that belongs to an opposition party, they could do that. And that was so risky because all of us in this screening could be jailed. And in jail or could be arrested. And there, everything could happen, starting with harassment, torture, rape, or be killed, including my family, where we did the film. And also, for books, for example, group of writers and artists, they form a shape of group, they call it works. And they were like making this open air market for the banned books, which everyone could come and buy under the table, of course.
right.
And people were circulating things between hand to hand.
No, it's
So
fascinating.
this how the Sudanese writers and artists fought back against the censorship and the banned books. And they weren't thinking about what I will gain. They were just thinking how I could put the word over there and how can express myself.
Right, fascinating. Masih, what do you know about, are there similar sort of underground networks in Iran of information? Yeah.
I mean, when my sister from Sudan speaks, it's like I am speaking about my own country. You know, recently, I myself, alongside Garry Kasparov, one of the famous enemy of Putin, this is how I know him, not from the chess champion, Leopoldo Lopez, the opposition leader from Venezuela, and many other dissidents from 56 authoritarian regimes, we actually initiated an organization where we decided to unite all the oppositions, all the leaders from different movements from authoritarian regimes. Because United Nations, unfortunately, became a place to unite all the dictators. So we decided to help each other as well, the way that the dictators are helping and supporting each other. And guess what? We're having from different countries, different geography, different colors, different religion, different ideas, but we all have one common enemy, the enemy of freedom of expression, the enemy of freedom of speech. And they're not staying there. What actually scares me, and I want to actually talk about this here, that all my friends, my fellow freedom fighters are suffering, is that now we are facing the same censorship here in the West, some kind of the same censorship in the West as well. How? My sisters from North Korea, they want to speak against human trafficking in China. How women are suffering from rape in order to live, to survive. And they ask media, organizations, athletes to talk about this. They keep quiet. They say this is too political. Why? Because they don't want to lose China. The trading with China is important. China's money is everywhere. And my friends and sisters from Afghanistan, from Muslim countries, when they want to talk about how under Sharia laws, women get blinded intentionally, face raped in Iran, Afghanistan, and Yazidi women want to talk about their own experience, then some of the university leaders say that this is too politically sensitive. It might cause Islamophobia. Believe me, this is kind of censorship as well in the West. Let us talk. Those who experience Sharia laws, they know how democracy is at risk, how freedom of expression is in danger. If you don't talk about this, then you are going to be the next target of those who want to impose censorship in Iran. Transnational repression. It is when people talk about me always telling me that, how you feel? The killers came in front of your house. I say that, forget about me. I'm not scared of them. But this is very scary in 21st century that the killers feel free to challenge the US government on US soil. This is a threat. Transnational repression from China, Russia, Venezuela, Iran, Africa is a threat to the freedom of speech here in Europe. And that's why I believe that if we don't get united, if you say, shh, don't talk about it, you're going to cause Islamophobia, believe me, the dictators will get united and they will end democracy everywhere, even here as well. Yeah.
It's a good lead into my next question I have for both of you actually is sort of your perceptions of the United States versus the reality that you've had living here, including the political reality that you're seeing. I'm just curious sort of, it's so important for Americans to hear people from, who've come from outside, who now live here, sort of how they see it, because you start to take things for granted, you lose a perspective, but you have a very important perspective on this, which you've started to articulate just now. I'm curious sort of how the expectation versus the reality has matched up.
That's a good question. Yeah. You know what? I have to say that we are now facing one of the most controversial elections in America. I have friends they love Trump. I have friends, they love Kamala. And I love America, and I love their fight. Because we are missing this fair and free election to fight over our candidates. And you take it for granted. And guess what? When I came to America, I took the streets, Women's March, and I was very excited. I was calling my friends in Iran, and I was telling, oh my God, I'm shouting my body, my choice in the streets. Nobody arrest me. Nobody arrest me. And I was so excited. I put a headscarf on a stick and waving. I was shouting, my body, my choice. And people were replying, her body, her choice. Even men were repeating that. And I was like, oh my God, this is the America that I love. But guess why? Then the same group were scared to join me and my women of Iran, that they put the headscarf on a stick in Iran and burning the headscarves. Because people were like, wow, this is against Muslim minority. This is against Islam. We have to be politically correct. Enough of being politically correct when it comes to Islamic Republic and Taliban. My dream is to walk shoulder to shoulder with my mother who wears hijab in America, in Iran. But I'm not allowed to walk with my mother in Iran. My mom can walk with me in America. I'm not against my mother. So join us. This is the America that I love. And I have to say that when I used to go to Fox News, people were in the street even stopping me. Hey, you're a good person. Don't go to Fox News. Then, okay, so I went to CNN to talk about women who lost their eyes, who were blinded. I go to CNN. People stop me and say that, CNN, loser, don't go there. So and I was like, hey, you have Fox News. You have CNN. We have only one state television. And that's the beauty of America. I know that you take it for granted, but you don't know how enjoyable to have media, newspapers that are independent. In my country, the Iranian regime used television to bring protesters, women, to do false confessions. They bring them to denounce themselves, to denounce me. I was watching my own sister, 17 minutes. I barely get 3 minutes on Fox News and CNN. My sister was on TV in Iran, 17 minutes, denouncing me publicly. And I was crying and watching her. My husband was like, then stop watching her. I was like, no, this is the first time I see my sister in a good quality. So you see, I'm gonna hug you all. Even hugging is forbidden in my country. I know I talk a lot, you can stop me.
I won't stop you. Right, the same question. I'm curious what your experience. You've lived in the States for 5 years now. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
What that experience has been like versus the thoughts that you may have had beforehand of what it would be like to live in America.
You know this called American dreams. It even reached Sudan. So in Sudan also we have American dreams. But when we come here, it's a totally different thing. I'm fortunate to be with the organization that take care of us, not only me, but all of the writers they hosting. But still, there is so much difference between what we imagined and what we lived. At least we say if America got sneezed, if America sneezed, the rest of the world catch the flu. So whatever happens here, it affects all the world. So it is very scary for me because I am from this history of heavily censorship and banned books. It scares me that America, where the free world, the democracy, where the freedom of speech is granted, they banning books. This is very alarming, and this could face maybe down the road to what happened to Mahmoud Muhammad Taha to be executed just because he wrote books. Yeah, and all it started like that. Because before they executed Mahmoud Muhammad Taha, and before in Sudan, I'm talking, and before they put people in jail and sent people outside of Sudan and to exile and be whatever in Sudan, raped and killed and tortured and everything could happen, it started with these small things. Like, no, we can't allow this in the schools. No, this is too dangerous. No, this touches or this push boundaries of what you can say and what you cannot say.
Well, I don't want our session to end without getting some advice from both of you, because you both come to this with so much experience and wisdom that you've gained from that experience. So how do we in America make sure that, you know, we don't turn into Iran or Sudan in terms of the censoriousness and the idea that you know, speech should not have the fullest latitude that it should have? What can we, from your perspective, what would you like to see Americans do to defend those rights?
Let's start from you.
Okay.
Think about it.
What I could say that everything, when it starts from the roots, from the grass, with the networking and with everyone who opposing this banning books, I think it's good to start to do. And I'm saying that, and in my mind, the experience that I have lived in Sudan, and I was one of the people who was participating in it and founding it and everything. For example, to have the last revolution in Sudan, it led by grassroots organizations, which we call it resistance groups. Like my group, it's called Medeni Resistance Group, where we were writing on the walls and distributing flyers, all of it underground, until we get to this critical mass and became revolution, and that revolution get rid of Omar al-Bashir. But unfortunately, the military was there and they made a coup on the transitional government, but still people fighting. And whatever comes from grass, it will grow like the trees, you know. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I don't have any advice, because I really need your advice how to break the censorship in America, because I'm telling you, being a woman is a crime. Being a free woman in Iran, in Afghanistan, is a crime. And I see that now the news about what's going on in Iran and Afghanistan being buried under different issues. And that's very sad. So what I want to actually ask you, it's very clear that talk to your children, especially if you have students, college students, university students, talk to them. They are the future of this country. They are the future leaders. They should not they should pick people over politics. When I see now the university campus is full of protests, I adore them, because they're like my children. But at the same time, it breaks my heart when I see that when women of Afghanistan, girls in Afghanistan being kicked out from a school, they're not allowed to get an education. Why the same students, why the same campus do not get outraged, do not give voice to the women of Afghanistan? When women in my country, now we are on the 2nd anniversary of Mahsa Amini, who got killed just because of showing her hair. So after when she got killed, Iranian women, they took to the street and they burned the headscarf to show their anger to the morality police. But why we don't see that women across the globe doing the same, burning compulsory veiling? So that's kind of like, I don't want to use the word hypocrisy, but double standard, that's a better one. So the double standard breaks not my heart, the heart of millions of girls in Iran, Afghanistan, other part of the authoritarian regimes, that why? Believe me, if Taliban, last thing, if Taliban and Islamic Republic, if they want to kill an American, they never ask you whether you support Trump or you support Biden. Oh, okay, so I'm not going to kill you. You're left, you're right, so I'm going to pick. No, They hate America. They hate democracy. They hate feminism. They hate all the values and all the rights that we all get it for granted here. So for them, doesn't matter who is in power in America. And for us, we should see this bipartisan and support our sisters in Iran and Afghanistan. Believe me, supporting your sisters in Iran and Afghanistan do not make you Islamophobic. Join our fight. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you both so much. I'm in awe of your bravery, and I really appreciate that we got a chance to chat.
I don't want to go anywhere. Woman, life,